Friends, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Gimel, Daf 53 of Masechta Nedarim. Sorry, I've just been thinking of really funny stuff. Okay, well, today we're studying the 53rd page of Masechta Nedarim. Today we're going to talk about Nedarim. We're also going to finish the 6th parak of Masechta Nedarim. Friends, how's Nedarim going? Kind of random, right? Okay, well, whatever. I guess you just got to remember B'nedarim alecha achar lashon b'nei odom, that by Nedarim you just go on what the people normally say. Without further ado, Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph all the way at the top. Hanodim and Tamarim. So if somebody says that they're not going to eat dates, mutar b'dvash tamarim. Well, it's only the dates they can't eat, but they're not referring to the honey from the dates. Misidvanius, mutar b'chometz sidvanius. From like these grapes that are only available in the winter. I think they're not particularly ripe or anything. So so you're saying he's not going to eat those, but the vinegar that comes from them, it's an ander azach. That's a different story. You can chapara on those. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Omer says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Kol Hashem told us to kuya olav v'noder hemenu, also biyotze hemenu. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that no, if he says he's not going to eat dates, and what does it say? Kol Hashem told us to kuya olav, that there's dates and there's date honey. So the date honey has the word date in it, right? So Kol Hashem told us to kuya olav, that like the thing that comes from it has like the same name as it. V'noder menu, and he says he's not going to have the dates. Also biyotze menu, so you also can't have the date honey. Okay. V'chacham matirim, the chacham say that it's permitted. Now says the Gemara, chacham anu Tanakama. So the havmin is to say that the chacham sound like they're basically like the Tanakama. Now what did the Tanakama say? I'm going to read it again. Hanoder min atmarim mutar b'dvash tamarim. So somebody says he's not going to have dates. Well, he's allowed to have date honey. The Chacham say at the end of the Mishnah, matirim. The Chacham say it's allowed. It sounds like the Chacham is saying the same thing as the Tanakama, that it's allowed. Right? That if you say you're not going to have date honey, you're allowed to have, if you say you're not going to have dates, you're allowed to have the date honey. Sounds like the Tanakama and the Chacham are in agreement, or are saying the same thing. So now listen to what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, actually, the Chachamim is their own unique opinion. The Chacham is not like the Tanakama. He's not like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. The Chachamim is actually, as we're going to see, the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar. You have to take out your brain a little bit for this, but only a little bit. It's not that bad. It's just a little weird, I guess. Tanakama, where am I? Fine. So you ben Ayu. So the nafkamina is Hadod Tanya, the following price. Klal zeh Om Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Says Reb Shimon ben Elazar the following: Kol shedarko lechol. V'derech ayotze mimenu lechol. So something that you eat and that which comes out of it you eat. So kigon tamarim udvash tamarim. Okay, so for example, like in our Mishnah, there was the example of dates and date honey. Okay, so what did everyone have to say about it in our Mishnah? The Chachamim said that the date honey is mutter. Yehuda ben Beseira says the date honey is aser. So nader bo oser bayotze mimenu. So, if you say that you're not going to eat the dates, you're also not allowed to eat the date honey. No, the miyotzim menu. If you say that you're not going to eat the date honey, also, you're not allowed to eat the dates. Okay, so far it sounds like Reb Shimon ben Elazar could be like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. But then what does it say? Kol she'ein darko lechol, something that you don't normally eat. So let's say you don't normally eat dates, right? Or I think maybe, for example, the sidvanius, right? You don't necessarily eat these like winter grape things, but you do consume the vinegar of it, right? So something that you don't eat, sort of the base product, but the product that comes from it, you do eat. No derbo. So if you say that you're not going to eat the sidvanius, ein osur ela bayotzi mimenu. Obviously, it's a reference, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Obviously, it's referring to the somebody's making noise. Obviously, it's referring to the chometz sidvanios. Because he's clearly referring to the vinegar, right? So for example, when it comes to sidvanios and chometz sidvanios, right, these grapes and the vinegar that comes from the grapes, since we don't eat the sidvanios, memele is referring to the chometz sidvanios. Now, that, right, and he's not referring to the sidvanios themselves, only to the chometz sidvanios. Okay, so what just happened, friends? Who could tell me what just happened? I'll tell you. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's opinion is that when it comes to dates and date honey, just like you're also with the dates, you're also with the date honey. When it comes to sitvonios and chometz sitvonios, if a fellow says he's not gonna, he's making a neder from the sitvonios, clearly he's talking about the chometz sitvonios because you don't eat the sitvonios. So clearly he's talking about the chometz sitvonios, but the sitvonios themselves, you'd be mutter. Whose opinion is that? Clearly it's not the opinion of the Chachamim, because the Chachamim said that when it comes to the dates, right, if he says he's not going to have dates, he'd be allowed to have the date honey, according to the Chachamim. And Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is saying he would not be allowed to have the date honey. So clearly it's not the opinion of the Chachamim. Now, it's also not the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. No, it's also not the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Because while Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would agree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, although probably technically Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar was younger, was later, so Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would be in line with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that if you say you're not going to have dates, you're also not allowed to have the honey, the date honey. That's in line with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. However, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar makes another statement, which is that if you say you're not going to have sitvonios, we assume that no, he's not referring to the sitvonios because people don't eat sitvonios. He must be referring to the chometz sitvonios, but the sitvonios themselves would be mutter. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would not agree with that. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would say that if a fellow says that he's not going to chaparan the sitvonios, so he's osur by the sitvonios and he's oichet osur by the chometz sitvonios. That's what Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says. Whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that he would only be osur by the chometz sitvonios, but the sitvonios themselves would be mutter. And therefore, whose opinion is that? That's the Chachamim. And when we say the Chachamim matirim, we're saying that whereas both the Chachamim, as both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would say that by the sitvonios it would be osur, the Chachamim matirim, the Chachamim are Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar who said that the sitvonios would be mutter. Ho ho, da. Friends, what do you think about that? I told you had to take out your brains. I hope you listened. Let's go weiter. Says the Mishnah. Okay, somebody is doing something next door. I think my next door neighbor is doing something with the drill. Doesn't she know I'm recording Babylon Talmud? Okay. Says the Mishnah. Hanodim and ayayin mutter b'yein tapuchim. Fellow says he's not going to have wine. Well, he's allowed to have yein tapuchim. That's an under azach. He says he's not going to have yain. Yain and yein tapuchim are separate, right? Again, right? Nedarim halach achaloshim b'nei adam. When it comes to vows, we go based on how do people normally talk. When people refer to wine, they're not referring to yein tapuchim. If they're referring to yein tapuchim, they would say yein tapuchim. They're talking about wine. Red wine. I had red wine the other day. I had the Petit Castel the other day. What do you guys think of that wine? What do you think about Petit Castel 2020? What do you think about it? Let me know on WhatsApp. What kind of wines? The people in California, what do you like to drink? California wines? The California wines can be very geschmack. Let's go weiter. My parents, they invited over the right people for lunch the other day. They brought over a very geschmack California wine. My mom said it was the best wine she ever had. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it very much as well. Let's go weiter. So, alright. Min Hashemin mutter b'shemin sumsmin. Now, if a fellow says that he's not going to consume oil, so he can't consume olive oil, but he can consume sesame oil. Min advash mutter b'dvash tamarim. If the fellow says he's not going to consume honey, he's permitted to have honey from dates, silan. Okay, he can have the honey from the bees. He can't have the honey from the bees, but he can have the honey from the dates, I guess. Min hachometz mutter b'chometz sitvonius. If he says he's not going to have vinegar, he's allowed to have sitvonius vinegar. Min hakrishin mutter b'kaflutis. Wait, what are Cretion? I forget. 1 second. So if he says he's not going to have leeks, I thought it was leeks. If he says he's not going to have leeks, but he's allowed to have leeks with a head or something. Okay. Minayerek mutter biyurakus asade Shu Shem Livui. And if he says he's not going to have vegetables, he's allowed to have vegetables of the field, because that's like a different thing. There's vegetables and there's vegetables of the field. Alright? I'm going to tell you. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learn in the Brayso, Anodim in Hashem and Beretz Yisrael. Oh, I live in Eretz Yisrael. So a fellow in Eretz Yisrael who makes a neder against oil. So what kind of oil are we talking about? Mutter b'shem and sumsimin, v'asu b'shem and zayis. It's talking about olive oil. So he's not allowed to have olive oil, but he's allowed to have sesame oil. U'v'bavel also b'shem and sumsimin u'mutter b'shem and zayis. But in Bavel, it's punkt fakert. In Bavel, the primary, when you say oil, you're talking about sesame oil, so that would be forbidden. But olive oil would be an under azach, would be a different story, would be permitted. Malkum shemistapkin mize umize, in a place where they consume both, well then also baze uvaze. So then you're not allowed to have either one. Pshita, isn't that obvious that in a place where they consume both, you can't have either one? Well, yeah, but we're talking about a situation where it's important is in a situation where most people usually get one, right? So let's say a place where generally if you're referring to oil, you're referring to olive oil, but not exclusively. Sometimes it could be referring to sesame oil. So Ma'udetema may have thought Ezo Basa Rube. I may have thought to say that we'll go by the majority. For the majority of the people, when they say oil, they're referring to olive oil. So then say you're also for olive oil, but mutter by Shem and Sumsimin, Kamash Malon, Sofik Yisur L'chumra. So it comes to teach that when it comes to an uncertainty, when it comes to an Isser, so we are stringent, right? If we're not sure if he's referring to sesame oil or olive oil, so we have to be stringent, and the fellow would be forbidden from both. Fine. Hanodim in Ayerek b'shar shnei shavua. In the 6 years of the Shemitah cycle that are not Shemitah, if a fellow says he's not going to consume vegetables, so then also be Yirakas Agine, so he's referring to vegetables of the garden. But would be permitted to have the vegetables of the field. Uvashvius, but if he makes a neder on Shemitah, so Shemitah you're not planting things in your garden. All there are the wild stuff in the field. So also be Yirakas Asadusim, and mainly you're referring to the vegetables of the field, the wild stuff. And that's why you're also umutu biyarkos agino, and whatever grows on its own in your garden, you would be permitted. Amar Babo Mishum Chanino ben Gamliel. Now that's of course only in a place where they don't bring vegetables from outside of Eretz Yisrael to into Eretz Yisrael, right? So meaning in a place. If you live in Eretz Yisrael and the only vegetables available during Shemitah is whatever you could find within Eretz Yisrael, and you make a neder against vegetables, memele, you're talking about the Yirakos Hasadeh, the wild vegetables, not the ones in the garden, because the garden, you're not planting things in the garden. But if it's a place where they bring stuff from outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, well then if you make a neder, you might be referring to Yirakos Agino, you might be referring to garden vegetables that came from outside of Eretz Yisrael. La'aretz also, but a place where they bring stuff from outside of Eretz Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael, so then it would be also, because it might be referring to vegetables of the garden. Kit Tanoi, it's like a machlekes Tanoim, in mevin yerek min chutz la'aretz. One opinion is that we don't bring vegetables from outside of Eretz Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. B'chananya ben Gamliel Omer, mevin yerek min chutz la'aretz. You can bring vegetables from outside of Eretz Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. My time I'll come to Manda Omer in mevin. What's the pshat with the opinion that says that we don't bring the vegetables from outside of Eretz Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael? Rabbi Yirmiyah mishum gush. Says Rabbi Yirmiyah, because we're concerned about the mud, that the mud from outside of Eretz Yisrael is tameh, and therefore we are concerned that there might be mud, and the mud will be tameh, and we don't want tameh mud going into Eretz Yisrael. Friends, I'm going to read. I had a Havamina. I thought I wasn't home before when I was reviewing the daf, so I didn't have the art scroll with me. But when I was reviewing it, I was saying to myself, maybe I'll just read this from the art scroll because it's pretty technical. So, okay, let's do it. Okay, says the Mishnah. Minakruv also be aspargus. Okay, so if he says he's not going to eat any cabbage, so he's not allowed to have asparagus. Asparagus mutar b'chruv. But if he says he's not going to have asparagus, he's allowed to have cabbage. Grisin also b'mikba. If he says he's not going to have grits, he's forbidden to have pottage. Rabbi Yossi says it's allowed. But if one says he's not going to have pottage, he's allowed to have grits. He says he's not going to have pottage, he's allowed. He's also not allowed to have garlic. Rabbi Yossi says it's okay. If a fellow says he's not going to have garlic, but he's allowed to have pottage. If he says he's not going to have lentils, he's also forbidden to have honey fried lentils. Rabbi says they're okay. But if he says that he's not going to have honey fried lentils, he's allowed to have the lentils. If he says wheat grains, and he says he's not going to have those. Also, bein kemach bein hapas, whether it's flour or bread, grits and shani toim. If he says grits, I'm not going to have those to eat. Also, bein chaim bein mevushalin, so you can't have them whether they're raw or whether they're cooked. Rabbi Rami says, konum gris or chita shani toim. If he says I'm not going to have gris or chita, right, grit or wheat grain, muter lachos chaim, you're allowed to have them raw. Okay. It says the Gemara Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, chita shani toim. If he says he's not going to have wheat grain. Also lefos umuter lachos. Okay, so he's not allowed to bake it, but he can chew it. Okay, fine. You can have it raw. Chitim shani toim. If he says he's not going to have chitim plural, well then also lachos, he's not allowed to have them raw. Mutter lefos, but you can bake it. Chito chitin shani toim. If he says both chito and chitin, well then also ben lachos, ben lefos. You can't eat it raw, nor can you bake it. Gris shani toim. If he says he's not going to have grit, also levashol mutter lachos. So you can't cook it, but you can eat it raw. Grisin shani toim. Well, also lachos, you can't eat it raw. Mutter levashol, you can cook it. Gris and shani toim. If he says he's not going to have gris, right, grit or grits, also bin levashol bin lachos, then you won't be able to cook it or to eat it raw. Hajun olach anodim and amavushal. Friends, that was afternoon beis of Masechet Nedarim. Friends, we talked about if you say you're going to have one thing, what has to affect the other thing? What do you want me to tell you? If you say you're not going to have dates, can you have date honey? So we talked about a three-way machlokas. The Tanakama said, yes, you can have the date honey. Reb Yehuda ben Beseira says you cannot have the date honey. And then we saw there's a third opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar, which deals with a situation where you have something like sitvani, or something that you don't eat the base product, but you eat the thing that comes from it. So in that case, both the Tanakama and Reb Yehuda ben Beseira would say that if you say that you're not allowed to have sitvanius, you would be also to have sitvanius. Whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that you would be mutter for the sitvanius, but it would be also for the chometz sitvanius. Okay, then we just basically talked about, when you say certain things, is it, oil. So you're not going to have oil. Is it sesame oil? Is it olive oil? It depends, it's all above. Okay. Friends, that was, what daf was that? Daf Nun Gimel of Masechet Nedarim. Peace.